Greetings! Now, if you've been playing Elden Ring PvP and you're one of the more astute players, you may have noticed something in the fights you've had, and that's a lot of weapons suck absolute donkey dick. And some might say, well, that's always been the case, or just get good and use a better weapon. But I don't think that does the game any justice. With a lot of buffs and nerfs already coming around, we should strive to make FromSoft notice a lot of these issues. Though, before I start going into topic on heavier weapons, let me address one of the elephants in the room. Yes, daggers suck. They have no range and deal very little damage, but that has always been the case. They were never meant to be a main damage source outside of having high critical damage with minuscule weight. And yes, axes, clubs and flails are borderline unusable with the exception of a few good Ashes of War, though those can't really be attributed with the weapon class. But clubs and axes have never been a good weapon type. I don't know why Miyazaki hates them so much. Nevertheless, they were always the black sheep, except for Dark Souls 2, but that's a story for another day. What I want to talk about today are the weapon classes that got shafted the hardest in comparison to earlier titles. Greatswords, ultra greatswords or colossal swords as they are now called, and in general everything big and beefy. Also, I have the general moveset of colossal swords in mind, so anything outside the poke that everyone and their grandma is spamming. For example, I'll be using the Axe of Godfrey in the background, though it might be one of the worst contenders to be honest. Also note that while trying to take this from an analytical standpoint to figure out why they feel so much worse, this video is still heavily biased. I've always been a big fan of the huge and clunky pieces of metal, and depending on the day I might play a lot better or a lot worse as well as my opponents. This also isn't just based on my win rate, but observation on how different kinds of players react to what I do. The most obvious thing to point out is the lack of 2-hit combos on normal swings, weapon arts not included. So on the surface level it might just seem that it's harder to trade with your opponents if all your hyper armor does is let you get a hit in once. But I think taking them out has fundamentally changed how PvP works. With how everything is set up, you're pushed into a direction that rewards you for dealing a lot of damage once, at best with a lot of range, then retreating and approaching your opponent again. After playing the row catch game of course, but good luck trying to do that with a great axe. Now, this has always been a viable strategy. Dealing a lot of damage over a great distance isn't a new concept, but with absolutely everything dealing so much that everyone 2 to 3 shots you with a proper build, keeping up pressure becomes a lot harder, especially for slow weapons. Do you really want to chase after someone after getting a hit in, with the risk being them hitting you for 1000 damage before you can even start up the animation? And what it essentially turns down to is that anything slower than a curved greatsword has to play extremely reactive. You can't outtrade someone, can't chase them down, and most of the times you don't outrage them either. This has always been a point of discussion, and it's always been the case that two players of equal skill level, with one using a fast weapon and the other a slow and heavy one, the opponent using quicker weapons will come out on top for the majority of fights. Big insight here, I know, but in Elden Ring fighting with a slow weapon just feels so much worse than before. It might be because of my generally very aggressive playstyle, but I'm required to be way better at the game than my opponent to win, with a way bigger gap required than before. Or the other way around, my opponent has to be way worse. So that's my take. Tell me what you think. If in your opinion I'm just talking garbage and don't know what I'm talking about, or maybe you agree. Axe of Godfrey video coming out soon. And as always, thanks for watching.